Hello and welcome to the Catholic Guide to Sustainable Living. Now, we're going to deal with a really fundamental issue today. I always maintain that the real path to fully addressing our environmental crises is not simply more and better engineering solutions to technical problems. At its heart, the environmental issue is anthropological. It concerns how we understand the human person. What is it to be human? What is the rest of nature? How are we located in that system? What is the dynamic between humans and non-humans? John Paul II referred to the concept of an adequate anthropology. That is a framing which is capable of grasping this dynamic and of allowing humans to operate as good stewards or good caretakers of the rest of the system. Now, basically, I think how we approach or the solutions which we propose for environmental problems follow from this anthropology. So we have an environmentalist movement which basically or frequently wants to extract humans from the system, either by reducing the human population or by instituting massive closed areas without human impact. But I'm inclined to think exactly the opposite. We, the human person, is a steward best when they recognize that they're deeply embedded in the system. They're part of predator-prey networks. They're part of ecosystems, and that we care from within. So one example or one good way of recognizing that is through practices of hunting and fishing, responsible killing of wild animals, killing, processing, eating, engaging. And so I'm going to talk today to a friend of mine with whom I've just completed a book, actually. He's called Banwart. He's a theology professor here at Ave Maria University and a very keen and experienced hunter. And we consider this issue of how to embed oneself in natural systems and then how that can generate. So we don't need to worry about a kind of formal starting point. But I thought it would be cool because I don't actually know about how you became a Catholic, because I'm a convert as well, which I've probably talked about. But yeah, tell me, you were a Texas Baptist, I think. Is that right?
Oh, pretty close, yeah. Interestingly enough, my mom grew up Catholic, uh, but like a lot of Catholics from her generation, really didn't understand what most of it was about. Um, and so shortly after I was born, she became an evangelical. Dad was Mormon actually at the time, and he converted. Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was basically doomed to be a theologian based on my
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of a mixed bag, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, they both became evangelicals shortly after I was born, and so I was raised pretty, devout Christian family, but with no real understanding of Catholicism. Uh, Long story short, I went to university to get a psychology degree, went on to grad school to get a counseling degree, and while I was there, I came in contact with serious academic theology. And the questions that it raised, I just found fascinating, and so I started reading more about the history of my own tradition, the history of, Christian thinking, and it wasn't long before I realized that I needed something a bit more than just me and my Bible. I needed the global historic, Catholic Church.
Yeah. So at that point, you say the history of your tradition, that was Protestant theology, basically. Or
Pretty much, pretty much.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
I
interesting.
wanted to
Yeah.
become well, I'd wanted to become Catholic, pretty soon after that, but my wife grew up Southern Baptist. And,
Okay.
she wasn't doing all that reading, so her journey was not quite as, so we settled on Catholic Light. We became Anglican for a few years and,
Oh,
but
okay.
eventually made the switch, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. That's pretty cool. So I was thinking back then as a Texas evangelical, was hunting already? I mean, our conversation today is largely going to be about hunting. Was hunting already part of that part? Is it kind of aligned with that tradition?
It is, at least in the South, the Bible Belt,
Mm.
hunting, it's just sort of part of that Southern culture, I think, in many
Yeah.
ways. Not everyone hunts, but even if you don't, it's, uh half a dozen people who do. So,
Yeah. I just remember
yeah, we
my mm,
go ahead.
sorry. I was going to say my PhD professor in Mississippi, he was not quite sure what stamp of Protestant he was, very faithful man, but it seemed like his church life was quite closely linked to his hunting life. Yeah, they talk about hunting and they go and hunt in each other's places, and it seemed like the whole thing was sort of tangled together in this Southern culture
Oh, yeah.
in a really good way.
I think so. Yeah, our pastor, was and still is a big hunter, so fishing trips, I mean, all that kinda stuff were just part of the social life of the congregation.
Yeah. Okay. So hunting was there, the evangelical thing was there, and generally speaking, it was kind of assumed implicitly, at least, the hunting was a good. It was a good thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, yeah, I mean, everybody you knew hunted, and so there really wasn't much question uh, that it wasn't a good. I mean, it brought families together, brought friends together, it put food on the table. Um, it was just assumed as a good, to be enjoyed, to be shared, and to be furthered.
Yeah. And yet, when it comes to the point, there's enormous objection to hunting
There
among
is.
huge other components of society,
No, that's right.
which is amazing, really. So it's obviously the case that hunting is not self-evidently good, even if we're reared to think so. I mean, I was also raised not hunt. I mean, shooting is we call it shooting in Britain is quite a different thing, I think, from hunting in the United States, and the cultural implications are different as well. But I was brought up just wandering around with a shotgun because my dad was a gardener and we had to shoot rabbits in the garden, which ate the crops and that sort of thing.
Sure.
Um, so I was also raised with this idea that hunting either as a practical pest control process or to eat the food was a good thing. And I didn't even realize, I think, there were the really strong objections. But I think we have to answer the question then, at least in a preliminary way, why is it that hunting is a good? Or what are our basic arguments in favor of hunting? If you had to answer someone shortly,
Yeah.
and we can enlarge on this.
Uh, yeah, well, I mean, I think you're right. For a large number of people, maybe most folks these days, that hunting would be a good is not obvious or self-evident. Um, I think one of the things to remember is that, living in the world that we do, a world where death is ubiquitous, in order for human beings to survive, at all, there has to be some form of death, it seems, that is, necessary for our nourishment, for any number of other things. Even if one wanted to live a properly, vegan lifestyle, even there, animal death is, an unavoidable, sort of collateral, uh, part of the process. And so it's not a question then of, whether killing animals, is in this form is, necessarily, well, how to put it?
Hmm.
If killing animals is unavoidable, then, we need to talk about various ways in which that can be done well and various ways in which that can be done poorly. And it seems to me that hunting carries with it certain moral implications, certain practices, certain goods that make it a far more superior, morally speaking, approach to, uh, acquiring meat than, say, factory farms or most of the other ways that people, get their meat these days.
Okay. So you're saying that in fact there's not a kind of killing, non-killing dichotomy. That's an illusion for as
Right.
a starting point. Whatever we do, even if we're growing soybeans, we're still killing things. I suppose you mean because we're applying pesticides and we're trampling the ground with tractors and so on. It's pretty much
Exactly.
impossible not to kill things. Yeah, okay.
Right.
So then you can rephrase the question as, okay, we have to kill something. How and what do we kill and how? I suppose, and what does it
Right.
mean? Yeah,
That's right.
okay. So I mean, just to challenge that a bit, I'm thinking we all seem to have a kind of intuitive sense that it's less bad to kill a bug than it is to kill a deer, say. So even
Right.
even given that we've got to kill something, perhaps we're better off living on soybeans and killing bugs than we are living off elk, which we have to murder.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and is that the case? Is it actually less bad to kill a beetle than a elk?
Well, I think that that intuition is there for a reason. And I think we have to admit, certainly as Christians, that death in any form is a tragedy, animal,
Mm.
human, what have you. And the hope we have is of a new creation where death, sickness, suffering are no longer characteristic features. So I think we need to say that all death is unfortunate and to be lamented. But yeah, it's harder to you feel worse when you accidentally hit an animal in your car versus, say, accidentally stepping on a bug, and I think that's in part because, um, it's easier to recognize ourselves or something, closer to ourselves,
Yeah.
in those animals. It's more familiar in some ways, even though bugs are far more, ubiquitous. We can relate
Yeah,
more
for
to
sure.
these other animals.
I haven't really thought about this before, but is it actually, is a, and this is a complete digression really, but suddenly I'm fascinated by legs. Is a rat actually of less value than an elk in a kind of transcendent sense?
Yeah,
I don't know. Is there actually a theological answer to that?
well, there are arguments to be made that there's a sort of hierarchy of being. So you have God as sort of the fullness of being, and then angels and human beings, and sort of this descending hierarchy of plenitude of being and goodness, and so on that way of sort of conceiving things, yeah, I would imagine that the elk would be higher up the scale than the rat.
Yeah, okay.
Um,
So then the vegan would have some traction in saying, okay, we're just killing small bugs and things like that. We're not actually killing large animals. But yeah, maybe we can come back to that. Okay. So so you mentioned there then this hierarchy of being, and I think from our discussions we've had previously, this is absolutely critical. This is what we have to get right. Um, so how maybe you could lay out as a starting point a little bit more about that hierarchy. Because I've talked about this in some of the other conversations with regard to stewardship, that it's absolutely critical we rightly specify this anthropology, or this framework of where God is, where people are, where non-human animals and plants are, and so on.
right. Uh, yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think Thomas Aquinas is really helpful here. He asked the question, goodness sakes, why are there so many different kinds of creatures? I mean, just hundreds of thousands of different species of insects
Mm,
alone. Why this vast array of different kinds of creatures? And he says, well, in the infinite goodness and beauty of God, he almost needs an infinite number of creatures to reflect the various aspects that are his goodness and his beauty. Every creature, to some degree or another, contributes to um, the imaging of the celebration of the goodness and beauty that God is. But not all creatures do this equally. And human beings, according to the biblical picture we have, are made unique among creatures because human beings are made in the image and likeness of God.
mm.
Now, what that means is a contested topic, but generally speaking, it means that human beings. I mean, obviously, we don't look like God. God doesn't have a body. So we image him insofar as, like God, we are able to know and love him, know and love each other, and know and love the rest of creation in this
Mm.
unique way that participates more deeply in who and what he is.
Yeah, okay. So what does it mean to love the rest of creation? Lose the
Right. Well,
So I think everyone will say they love creation, right? In my ecology class there the other day, we did a little discussion about eco warriors, and we were looking at this very famous English eco warrior called Swampy, who used to, he was a hero of mine when I was in my teens. He used to tie himself to trees and bury himself in tunnels under highway developments and things like that. He loves creation, right? But I'm wondering, is there a better way of doing that? Or is there something which is actually more meaningful, love of creation? Or a better way of phrasing it?
yeah, yeah. Well, I think there is, because it's really interesting when in the creation account that we have in Genesis chapter 1, when God creates human beings and he makes them in his image and likeness, um, the very first things he says to them aren't, sort of, "Hi, I'm God. Welcome to Eden. Let me show you around." It's his very first words to them are to give them a set of instructions. He tells them, fill the earth and subdue it, and be fruitful and multiply. Now, uh, this is sort of an odd way to begin the conversation, certainly an odd way to introduce yourself to someone. So what's going on there? Um, well, what he's doing is he's inviting human beings into a unique relationship with him, a friendship. Um, Friendships are always about something, some center of gravity, some common experience around which a relationship begins to orbit. What God is saying is, look, I've been bringing all this new life into the world. I want you to partner with me in bringing new life into the world. I've been exercising sovereign care and providence over all these creatures. I want you to partner with me in caring for these creatures as well. And so, to answer your question, I think when we talk about loving creation as Christians, what we mean is partnering with God in the way that He has called us um, to provide for creation, to help steward and manage creation. There's a particular grammar to what the word love means in that case.
Mm.
Uh,
Okay.
and that's helping each creature find its to succeed in mirroring God the way that they've been created to do.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with you here. I still find it quite hard to claim that. It seems pretty pretentious, really, to say that
Oh yeah.
we as humans actually bring to fulfillment all these other animals. And because obviously most environmentalists would be thinking of a much more flat ecology, basically, of which humans are just one species among many. We're just a smart monkey and we evolved and we know we're genetically related to all these other species. Can we really claim that we actually have this dominant role? There's dominant, maybe dominant isn't the word, but this kind of mediating role.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to remember that, and this is often forgotten. I think, even by well-meaning people, that we're still uh, creatures among creatures. That we're
Mm.
still fellow citizens of the created order, and so caring for other creatures means, I think, in part, learning from them what that means. Not supposing that we know what it is to care for them, but letting creation tell us what it needs. And in so doing, we discover what we need. That there's a gift exchange there if it's done correctly, uh, because the good that we're seeking is ultimately one and undivided, because God is undivided as the source of all goodness. So my good as a creature and the good of the white-tailed deer and everything else, in some form or other, work together, fit together into a harmonious whole, and uh, whatever sort of superiority we have is one that has to be deeply aware of the sort of interconnectedness of it all, and that when Jesus talks about what love looks like, he almost always does so in terms of um, seeking the good of the other first, sacrificially serving the other. So the privileged position we have isn't one of dominance at all. It's one of a unique call to service that requires listening and gift exchange and all the rest.
Yeah, that's really attractive. So it is completely legitimate to talk about a dialogue with non-human creation. It really is a process of listening and trying to understand. It makes me think immediately of being a gardener. A successful
Mm.
gardener is the one who really starts to understand almost how the plants are feeling. Like if they're
Yeah.
feeling a bit yellow or a bit dry or whatever, you start to think, oh, what's going on? And maybe it's a lack of nitrogen, or you have to understand how they function, and then you're able to give them what they need to grow to the fullness of their potential. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly right. If you just assume that the plant is yellow because it needs more water and you keep watering it, you might not realize that it's yellow precisely because it's being overwatered. Uh,
Right.
so, so you just, yeah, exactly what you said. You have to learn from the creatures in many respects, most respects, how it is that they ought to be cared for and loved the way that God loves them and calls us to partner with Him and express Him.
Yeah. So Okay. And, and then I have to introduce then the word stewardship here, of course, which is what we head towards all the time. This seems to me this role of listening, learning what the rest of creation needs, and then trying your utmost to provide it. That feels like stewardship. That
Yeah,
seems to fulfill my kind of idea, at least a priori idea of what stewardship might be. So I'm wondering if hunting, or how does hunting allow you to fulfill this role? Perhaps I can I can imagine how it would allow you to fulfill the learning about nature bit. Do you think?
sure. Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that's definitely the case. I mean, we'll probably talk about this a bit more later, I suspect. But in order to succeed as a hunter, to be a successful hunter, it requires a great amount of learning about the land that you're hunting, the animals you're hunting, um, what is sustainable within the place that you're hunting. There are all
Mm.
sorts of uh, opportunities and necessities for listening and learning as a hunter. Um, at least if you want to do it successfully.
Yeah, and I think I agree, of course. Um, but I still wonder, and I know people will say, well, why do you have to kill something to attain to that knowledge? You
Right.
got to go. So far, I think we agree. Yes, you need to go and learn about creation because you can't rightly serve creation if you don't understand it. You have
Right.
to attain that really profound insight into what's going on. And I'm pretty convinced that pastimes like hunting and fishing enable that um, in a way that other activities don't. But that is easy to challenge, maybe, because you think, well, you could just go and photograph deer, for
Yeah.
example. And you still have to get out there and you still have to stalk them and you still have to be in the woods and you still have to listen and find them. So
Right.
what do you think it is that sets hunting and photography apart?
That's a good question. And I think it's important to remember that in some respects, this whole conversation about hunting and stewardship is something of a tragic accident. I mean, if sin doesn't enter the picture, then human beings from the beginning uh, succeed beautifully in knowing how to live in stewardship with the creatures that we enjoy the rest of creation with. It's only because sin enters the picture, and with it, suffering and death, that we have
Mm.
to have these sorts of conversations. Um,
Why?
I uh, well, I mean, on the biblical picture, the way that the Lord creates the universe is, I mean, unimaginably, but this is what we have: a world in which sickness, suffering, and death are not normative. This is not structural the way that we think that it is structural, the way you observe that it's structural.
Yeah.
Um, so creation as it's originally intended does not have sickness, suffering, and death. And the new creation that the Lord will bring about in fullness at Christ's return will have no sickness, suffering, and death. That we have those things is because we have introduced sin into the world, and with that sin, have damaged ourselves and the rest of creation, and ongoingly so. Uh,
Mm. Okay.
uh,
Presumably, lions still ate deer in the original creation.
well, that's on one view of things. You sort of have two schools of thought. You have
Yeah, I'd like to hear about that because I find it really. I know I've heard the idea that about the lions eating straw. I don't buy that for a second. They're predators. They always eat animals, surely. So does that not?
yeah.
Yeah, tell us the two signs.
Well, I think the most common view you're going to find is the view that Thomas Aquinas holds, which is to say, look, yeah, if you're going to have lions, if you're going to have predators, necessarily there's going to be prey, which means to some degree or another, death and suffering are just part of the fabric of the universe. These are evils that
Mm.
are natural evils,
Yeah.
not moral evils, but just the sorts of introductions of lack that are necessary for creatures as we know them to be the creatures they are. there's another line of thought that comes from Augustine, that again, it's unimaginable, but all the same, Augustine says, "Well, look, Scripture is pretty clear. Anytime that death is discussed, it's almost always in conversation with sin. The Bible
Yeah.
strongly suggests that this is not a necessary feature of the world. So how does this happen? Well, Augustine says, uh, well, uh, on day one, according to Genesis 1, the Lord creates light, but you don't get any light sources until day 4, sun, moon, and stars. So what's this light from day one? Well, Augustine says this is probably the creation of the angels. Um, but by the end of day one, there's not just light, there's light and darkness. And so almost immediately upon their creation, we think a third of the angels, based on Revelation 12 and elsewhere, a third of the angels rebel against God and are thrown out from his presence uh, into what will become the rest of creation. So day 3, 4, 5, and 6 of Genesis 1, where the Lord's making the dry land, the plants, the fish, the birds, the animals, and us.
Okay.
All the rest of creation is made in the context of these demonic corrupting influences. Uh, so that it's not God's plan to create lions in such a way that they necessarily kill, but given that the world is made in the context of this already fallen set of creatures who are actively working against God, well, this perhaps is how we are to make sense of the nature being red in tooth and claw. Um,
I see. That's interesting. I hadn't fully understood that before. It just seems to me that it would be kind of a diminishment of what a lion is, of what a predator is, if it wasn't a predator anymore. Because it's absolutely inherent in its whole manifestation is that it knows about how to stalk prey and catch it and eat it and share it with its young and so on. Yeah, I don't see how you could have a functioning food web that wasn't trophic in that manner. But yeah, maybe that
I mean,
doesn't matter. Maybe it doesn't really matter.
well, I mean, I think it's certainly an interesting question.
Yeah.
It's hard to picture, but I mean, if sort of at the moment sort of evolution begins of material beings, there are these sort of demonic forces at work,
Yeah.
degrading it. Well, then perhaps these creatures evolve the way they do uh, in damage already. So what would it be to be a lion? That it's not a predator? Who knows?
Okay. So we can't know. Yeah. Yeah.
There's this
Okay.
tension,
So
though, all the same.
yeah, so we got onto this because you were talking about how it is that hunting, perhaps more
Yeah.
than photography, can give you insight into, or then the insight that you need to be a good steward. And you were saying, well, um, without sin, that wouldn't be necessary.
Right. But
And I
because
still
we
don't
do have
quite
sin,
understand that.
that without sin, hunting wouldn't be necessary?
Yeah. Well, other than this Augustine idea of lions eating hay, um,
Yeah, yeah.
you saying that you would already have an intuitive and adequate knowledge of creation without having to do these outdoor death-based activities.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
Yeah.
In fact, it's in the biblical account, the sort of mythopoetic account of Scripture, it's not even actually until the story of Noah where, it's permissible to eat animals, by divine decree. Um, Prior to
Okay.
Noah, the biblical picture is a vegan, world, or at least vegan for humans. Uh,
Oh,
it's so it's again, it's only after the sin continues to be a problem that the concession is made, "Well, uh, you can eat animals, I suppose." Something like that.
okay. So this is getting more theological than I anticipated, but of course you can't argue in favor of hunting that God set it up that way right from the beginning, because maybe not.
Yeah, at least on the sort of, the standard, reading of the text that we have. Um,
Okay. You better not
but
tell the vegans then.
no, well, uh, but I think what makes hunting, a morally, helpful practice to engage in a way that's superior to photography, um, at least it seems to me, is, I think it would be easier to, be a photographer, and, do similar things that hunters do, get out there, stalk, so on and so
Mm.
forth. Um, and walk away from that experience um, uh, in such a way that your implication in the death of other animals wasn't obvious to you in the way that I think it probably needs to be for us to know how we ought to live well in the world, or to feel the gravity of what it means to live well in the world. Um, when you have
Okay.
to
Yeah.
kill an animal yourself that you're going to eat, there's something about that experience that has a profound impact on the person, such that the gravity of what it means to live as a creature that depends on the death of other creatures, uh, it just sort of forces the moral issue in a way that I don't think many other experiences do.
Okay, so you're saying that you can just get on with being a person in the world, and being perhaps environmentally conscious, but if you're not actually killing things consciously and deliberately, you're less likely to really understand your place in the structure
I
of the
think so.
reality of what you're doing. Yeah. Okay. Um, and yeah, it's a strange paradox, isn't it? We talk about stewardship and loving creation, and then we kill things on purpose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
For
it's
fun?
a
Is it just for
tragedy.
fun? It's a tragedy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that sets it up a bit strangely, doesn't it? So you go and do this hunting thing, and I don't hunt much at all, but I love to go fishing and kill animals, kill fish and eat them. But it's a tragedy?
Yeah.
That's
I mean, on the Augustinian picture, this is, which I find convincing. Uh, yeah, that any creature, needs to die in order for another creature to thrive. Um, I mean, there's something beautiful about it, but there's also something, tragic about it.
hmm.
Um, I mean, if you look at it from the whole, then, perhaps you can see the beauty, but it's up close, it's ugly and tragic, I think.
Yeah, so then I have to ask, why do you do it? Because I know you're a long-term experienced hunter. You hunt for your food, you hunt out of the love of it. Why do you do it? This tragedy.
Well, because I think, again, it's unavoidable. If I'm gonna be, living in a world where I'm necessarily implicated in animal death, um, even if I'm a vegan, the, um, farm equipment is gonna result in the death of animals. The 18-wheeler who brings the meat to the store is gonna hit animals. I mean, there's just no way to live in the world without death. The microbes in our gut that live and die, by the billions in order for us to digest our food, death is an unavoidable feature. If that's so, uh, then it seems to me having to be directly involved in it, um, in some ways, um, as I said, makes you more aware of the moral gravity of what it is that you're doing, makes you feel the tragedy in a way that's, visceral and, undeniable. But because of that, it, I think, creates a desire to, minimize the suffering and death as much as
Mm.
possible, because you know what it looks like, and you can't hide behind, a grocery store, counter. You can't hide behind these other things that put a barrier between us and how things actually go. Um, and I think it makes us intimately familiar with the lands in which we live in a way that teaches us the kinds of things we need to know to live as good stewards in other respects.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that, but I'm thinking now, you're saying about this, that grasping the reality of death, possessing it as something inevitable, something you have to do, and then doing it rightly. It makes me think that that's arguably the equivalent of, for example, deciding you're not going to fly because you want to minimize your impact on carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Saying, really, I'm not going to fly anymore. I'm literally going to take a train wherever I go, even if it takes 10 times as long, or some sort of other fairly radical lifestyle decision like that. I
Yeah.
remember hearing about a scientist who was doing research. He was from Europe. He was doing research in the tropical rainforest in South America. And he ended up getting a cargo ship back, and it took him 6 weeks or something to get home instead of flying to it. And he got the sack from his job. because he used to have an email saying, "Do you mind if I'm 6 weeks late because my my conscience tell me I need to get this boat back rather than flying back?" And they said, "No, sorry, sorry, mate." But yeah, okay, I like that way of looking at it. Yeah. Okay. So then the other bit, which we've thought about before, and which I find really fascinating, is this proposal that if you're going to be a good steward, if you're going to love creation, then you just know it. You need to know it
Yeah.
properly, because otherwise you can't do what's right. And hunting and fishing then are a way of discovering knowledge, both of individual animals and of their ecosystem and of the place you're hunting.
Right.
So we've talked before about your farm, the Texas farm. Can you tell us
Yeah.
about that, this place that you love?
Oh, yeah. So, my grandfather on my mom's side, and his brother, uh, for a long time owned about 260 acres of land, in LaGrange, Texas. They both, since passed on. It's been, the land now belongs to the children. Um, but we've gone out hunting there for as long as I could imagine, or as long as I could remember. My dad taking, my brothers and my sister out, uh, going out with grandpa. We spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, at the land, in the deer stand, getting the land ready for the hunt, shredding the fields. I mean, all the things that go into a successful hunt. Uh, our family has just done for multiple generations now, in a way that makes that place, uniquely important to me in a way that no other place is. Um, and I think
That's a real
the hunt,
privilege.
yeah, yeah, the hunting and that generational, uh, handing on of habits and, practices necessary for that. I care about that land in a way that I don't care about most other places, and it's instructive to think about, how that works.
Yeah. So then the question is, well, who's going to be the best steward of that bit of land? And it seems pretty obvious that that it's
Right.
going to be you and your brethren rather than anywhere else.
No,
Not
that's
just
right.
because you have this emotional connection to it, because you know what's best for it
Yeah, that's
better than
right.
anyone else. Yeah.
When my grandfather first, passed away and the land, went into, sort of direct management by my aunts and uncles, um, one of my uncles hired a consultant from the outside for advice on how to manage the land, and he's a brilliant fellow and knew, the region fairly well. Um, but he was making assumptions about the land itself that my dad and brothers, and I knew, well, no, that's actually not true in this case, because
Right.
it wasn't an abstract, thing. It was a concrete, experience that we knew precisely because of those, hours and hours and hours involved there.
Yeah. So I think a lot about yeah, about who should be in charge and how you should be in charge of these bits of land, and I guess the kind of exemplary cases with Indigenous communities,
Yeah.
who I'm very interested in, um, who have this very similar, I think, intimate and generational knowledge of their place, and they
Yeah.
build their whole cosmovision, their whole understanding of reality around it. But um, who, for one reason or another, have become disempowered by legislation or by war or by incoming economic interests, and they're no longer able to care for their place. And so there are movements within conservation biology to re-endow them with the agency, with this capacity they need to take charge. Um, but the same thing seems to apply in our case in Western societies, where that engagement with the place, not in this case through indigenous modes of living, but through recreational fishing and hunting, is kind of it's rather similar, isn't it? So
Yeah,
I speculate that it's actually identical, in fact.
I would think so. I think it's about as close as we're gonna get, I think, to, yeah, reestablishing those kind of, deeply familial, relationships, with the land.
Yeah. So the question then is, if you don't care for that bit of land, if we don't care for the bits of land that are immediately in front of us, who does?
Right.
And I suppose I suppose what's the alternative? That they become government reserves or something like that, and they get looked after by state biologists, or it seems
Right.
incredibly unlikely that they're going to have the same set of psychological, emotional motivations, or practical, intimate knowledge to actually do the same job.
Right.
Yeah, so that seems reasonable. But what about, this is my situation, what about hunting for people who don't have a farm that their granddad loved and they have to go down to the local public hunting area?
Yeah,
Is that still a good?
I think so. It's I mean, yeah, it's an incredible privilege to have land in the family like that, and not everyone does. Uh, but I still think that it's possible for hunting and fishing, even on public lands, to
Mm.
um, create at least, to the degree possible, those same kinds of goods. Uh,
Yeah.
at least
Yeah, so
as much as it can be done.
okay. Yeah, so we talked about how hunting, and we talked so far today about this idea of the kill and how that raises these moral imperatives and compels you to be aware of the reality of what you're doing. Um, we've also talked in the past more broadly about hunting and fishing as a path to virtue, as to character formation. And I
Right.
wonder if you could talk a bit about that. How is it that going out and killing stuff for fun can help you to be a better person?
Yeah. Well, so, the story I like to tell, it's a bit long, so feel free to.
Oh, tell away,
uh,
tell away.
uh, I remember being struck, I think it was a family vacation where we were, maybe we were driving back to Texas, and, I had my children with me, and they were young, and, uh, we stopped, at some place to get, lunch on the way, and, the kids had chicken nuggets, and they finished their chicken nuggets, but, were full and didn't finish all of them. Uh, and the sort of I was struck this one time by the ease with which that meat was discarded, in a way that would never, ever, ever happen, if what was on the menu was a bit of venison from a deer I'd harvested. Um, so what is it about the chicken meat that was so easy to do away with, versus, the venison that I served? There's no way that's getting tossed in the trash.
Yeah.
Uh, well, the difference is because I know what it took to get that venison on the table. I'm intimately familiar with all that. There's so much that goes into, hunting, the training, the preparation of the land, the learning of the land, seasons. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. Uh, to say nothing of having to watch this beautiful creature, and knowingly take its life, get your hands dirty and cleaning it. Um, there's something about that experience. Again, I think, uh, helps us to appreciate the need to develop the sorts of practices that minimize our negative impact as much as possible, uh, and create in us a sense of our great need to learn from the rest of our fellow creatures and how best to care for them. Um,
Yeah,
in a
okay. So
nutshell.
this is hmm. So virtue can be learned from difficult things by striving to do good in difficult things. But I'm thinking of the example of playing football or something like that. You really want to do your best. So you work out and you struggle and you learn, but why? So you can win, I suppose. With something like hunting, I haven't really thought about this before, but with something like hunting, it seems that you're striving also because it's so important that you get it right, because that is literally a life or death matter that you get it right. If you get it
That's right.
wrong, you impose suffering or you
Right.
impose waste. And back to the chicken nugget example. So it's
Right.
actually a kind of the ultimate mode of doing something difficult and growing in virtue, because it's not just about acquiring skill and winning. It's about really taking, this is stewardship, taking responsibility for creation. Is that right?
I think so. I think so. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, because if you're hunting, uh, if you're harvesting meat, for the sake of providing for your family, that's a good. And if you're doing it in a way that recognizes our role in creation as stewards, as creatures among creatures,
Mm.
um, growing in that knowledge, growing in those practices that allow us to do that well, that's a good. And it seems
Yeah.
that the sort of formation that hunting and fishing required to develop those habits, those virtuous dispositions towards the good in a way that's um, profound, I think.
Yeah, okay. So hunting helps you know about a place, fall in love with it, want to do something about it in terms of stewardship, but then also helps you to develop the capacity to do that right thing. Suddenly what pops into my mind is, again, from my ecology class, I was thinking about hunting, and I came across a company called Heli Bacon. The Heli Bacon is in Texas,
Oh, I
and the
yeah,
idea of Heli Bacon, the idea of Heli Bacon is that they have these Vietnam era helicopters, and you can pay lots of money to be given a machine gun, and you fly across the field of Texas, shooting wild hogs from your helicopter.
yeah.
So it doesn't seem immediately obvious that that fulfills this virtue-based model. Is that not what you think about these? I wonder, are the modes of hunting, and it seems like this is one which aren't actually good. I don't know if you're brave enough to comment on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's it's tricky. This is where I think
Mm,
it illustrates the point. I mean, the land we have in Lagrange, the family has in Lagrange, the feral hogs there are they just tear up the land. So they're an
yeah,
invasive species. They're not supposed to be there, and the damage they do to the land is just remarkable. Uh, and so partly, I'm a little bit sympathetic to um, projects that try to sort of eliminate those threats to the land and the sort of natural environment as it's supposed to be. Um, because hogs are really smart. They breed really quickly, and so if you don't sort of take out a herd all at once, in some respects, you're just making for bigger, stronger hogs. Um,
okay.
but
So it's more of a management process than a hunting
it's
in the
supposed to be if it's done right.
yeah,
Um,
okay, yeah. Sorry, but you
but
said "but."
well, yeah, I mean, there is something slightly horrific about uh, that sort of delighting in the sort of mass execution of all these feral hogs, and again, it's done at a distance where you kill them and
Mm.
fly off, and then that's it. The sort of connectedness to what that means uh, isn't really present, I don't think, in that sort of way.
Okay, can you expand on that distance? It matters that it matters
Yeah.
for the goods of hunting, you're close to the death?
I think so. I think so because again, it's if it is indeed a tragedy, and it's something for which we are inevitably responsible, then taking full responsibility for that tragedy means being familiar with the tragic element of it. So if you just sort of fly over land that's not yours, uh, and kill a bunch of hogs that don't affect your land. And leave, well, you just had a good time, and as a byproduct, you probably helped a rancher who's got some management issues, um,
Yeah.
but you don't feel the tragedy of that. You just have enjoyed the thrill of having done this thing. Um, Whereas we've had to trap hogs on the land in LaGrange, and they're in the cage, and you have to walk up to them individually, and shoot them. I
Yeah.
mean, even though you know the damage they cause, you still, feel the weight of what it is to take this life in a way that, um, it's not pleasant, actually.
Yeah. So I also one of my other conversations, I talked to Brandon Sheard, who he calls himself a meat smith. He's at Farmstead Meat Smith, and he raises hogs and makes these incredible, traditional preserved pig products, like really lovely hams and prosciutto and all this sort of thing. And he also talks about this moment of raising the animal, being close to the animal, looking at the animal,
Yeah.
and then shooting it in the head, and then you're
Yeah.
dealing with the consequences. And that is really profound. But then that's really directly oriented towards, well, it helps you, I think, grow in virtue and moral responsibility, but it's oriented towards sustaining the household. So
Right.
the end of it is feeding the family, maintaining your income, producing this craftsmanship, basically.
Yeah.
All of that's absent, I think, if you're killing for pest control. And I remember reminds me of the rabbits I used to shoot in the garden when I was little. It felt better if we ate them.
Yeah. Yeah,
What
yeah.
if we just chuck them in the bushes?
Yeah.
So
Well
yeah,
well
and even today, someone was saying I introduced this conversation with someone who didn't really know about hunting at all was saying, "Well, I don't mind if you hunt for food, but sport hunting, I don't really necessarily buy this argument, but maybe we should touch on this. Sport hunting, not so good. Sport hunting, whatever that constitutes.
yeah,
What do you think about this?"
I think I have a hard time with it, uh
Hmm.
we were always raised, and this is where I think sort of the intergenerational habits and practices are so important. We were always raised that if you're gonna kill it, you better eat it. Uh, Now I think there's, ways of expanding that. If you're gonna kill it, you better make good use of it. Um, and so, yeah, well, the hella bacon, whatever it was, that it seems to me to not quite, to meet that standard. Sport hunting,
Yeah.
I mean,
Hmm.
I'm sure there are ways in which that could be, beneficial in the ways that we've been talking about. You'd still be close involved to the tragedy of it all, but, it seems to me that it's not as fully, outfitted to achieve the good, as hunting for food.
Yeah. Although there's still, if you're still doing it as part of your stewardship, then maybe there's a legitimate good
Yeah, yeah.
in that it helps your native species, for example, to survive.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm wondering now, I'm thinking about the Jains in India and these other religious groups, which I think took exactly the opposite approach. I remember when I was young in India watching them walking along and sweeping the floor in front of them so
Yeah,
they didn't tread on a bug and killing it, or try not to inhale any bugs, or making sure there's nothing living on their vegetables and things like that.
right.
So I'm wondering, okay, we talk about vegans eating vegetables from the supermarket, which carry the blood of thousands of bugs on them. But I mean, could you just take a totally different route and instead of killing things and embracing your place in the food chain and the reality of death, absolutely just strive to minimize what you kill? Just say, really, actually, it's wrong to kill in any circumstances. And then really with full integrity, trying to avoid that.
I think
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm not sure. I don't know what the answer to that is. I wonder
No, I
what
don't either. I don't either. My instinct is to say, uh, yeah, I mean, if death really is a tragedy, then we should be trying to minimize it, as much as possible. Um, so, for example, when we deer hunt, I harvest,
Mm.
if, it works out. Doesn't always work out. There's been years and years of drought, but we, harvest 1 deer a year because that's enough to feed our family, for an entire year, from one season to the next. Um, it would be wrong, it seems to me, given the actual needs that my family has, to do more than that. Um, I don't want to sort of compound, the tragedy. Um, the way I put it as, I mean, if you're a Christian, you're convinced that the Lord is in the business of bringing beauty out of broken things. Um, if the brokenness of the world is what requires, death, then the Lord could bring beauty out of it, for sure. But that doesn't mean we should, um, break things unnecessarily, I suppose. So minimizing our impact, I think, is
Yeah.
a good thing. I'm just not sure how realistic it is, to succeed in that. And I think that there are goods that come with hunting that don't come, from that approach alone.
Yeah. Okay. So it seems then the hunting, like everything else we can do, can be done well, but is also susceptible to
Yeah,
being done viciously. And perhaps if we're greedy, immediately we can be greedy about it.
that's
Or
right.
we can get, I suppose, we can get caught up in the bloodlust of the moment and kill too many, or yeah,
Or in a way that maximizes suffering versus minimizing suffering.
yeah, which makes me think of the issue of skill then, in terms
Yeah.
of responsibility. What can we say about that?
Well, I think part of, learning how to hunt means, yeah, acquiring skills to do with the land, but also with using the tools, that you're gonna use for the hunt. Um,
Yeah.
so, for example, my youngest, very much wants to harvest a deer of his own, um, but as far as I'm concerned, he's not spent enough time practicing with the rifle such that I know he can shoot a deer and drop it versus, say, shoot a deer and he gets wounded. We can't find it in the woods and it suffers unnecessarily. Those skills I think are important too.
Yeah. Okay. So again, back to if we're going to take responsibility, we really need to take responsibility.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
have to be able to kill properly.
Right.
Yeah. But even as you say, even killing properly is still a kind of bloody, harsh, emotional kind of experience. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember standing, and even though I've never killed a deer, I remember standing with a pigeon, one pigeon that I shot with my air rifle in my hands and feeling really bad about it.
Yeah, yeah.
So you know, don't you, that you've killed something?
Yeah,
Whereas
that's
when you
right.
buy a chicken, from the supermarket, you just totally don't.
Yeah.
I know that some people do. I remember one of my wife's cousins at the age of 5 or something was given chicken for her supper. And she said, "Oh, where does chicken come from?" Oh, it was an animal. And she's literally been a vegetarian ever since. But I think that's relatively unusual, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah.
We can manage to live without encountering the reality of death. But this pigeon, oh, it's pretty traumatic. Didn't stop me killing other pigeons, but yeah.
Well yeah, what's funny, every hunting season, my dad and my brothers will go out to the land, and about 3 or 4 months before season starts, we'll make sure that the batteries and the trail cameras are good and that the memory cards are good. And up until, opening day, we'll look at the pictures of the deer that are coming to the feeder, uh, and just delight in how, beautiful they are, the racks on these things, the bodies of these things, the age of these deer, just beautiful, amazing
Mm.
creatures. Uh, so when one of us is in the deer stand and one of those animals that we've been watching for months shows up, uh, not just on the camera, but in the flesh, and you see the beauty of this and this majesty of this animal, and you knowingly take its life. I mean, that I've never been in a situation where I didn't feel that, in my bones, um,
Yeah.
in a way that I've never felt about a cheeseburger I got, at
Yeah.
a fast food restaurant.
Yeah. So we've been proposing slightly theoretically that hunting then builds virtue and that this encounter with death uh, is actually fruitful for your personal formation. But just to finish off, I have to ask you in yourself whether you actually genuinely believe this to be true. Are you a better man because you killed this beautiful deer
I
that
think
you were watching on the camera? Are you
uh
going to claim it?
Uh, insofar insofar uh, yeah, I think yeah, I think so. I think,
Mm.
the habits that have been instilled in me by my father and my grandfather and that I'm passing on to my own kids, um, they have unfortunate, components for sure, um, but I think I believe myself to be a better steward because of it, and I think I can point to intergenerationally concrete evidence as to why that's so.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I think we can leave it at that. There you go. Can't say far on that, Anu. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Uh,
We've used our hour. It's such a fascinating topic, isn't it?
it is, it is. Well, that's why I'm glad we're writing the book. I think it's gonna be,
And I'm excited about the book. I need to actually write some of the book. Yeah.
well, me too. Uh, no, I've enjoyed it very much, Dan. Thanks, man, for the opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you. It's cool. I like what you have to say. It was good, actually. I feel like I've learned more of you today that I didn't know already. Yeah. Cool.
Um,
Cool.
all right,
Okay, then. God bless, mate. See you later.
you too.
Bye bye.
Anyway.
Bye bye.